Today's explainer. We are jumping right into something absolutely staggering today. We're unpacking a highly unorthodox legal document, literally titled The Truth About the Malaysian Flight MH17, Criminal Charges Against the Malaysian Airline and Claim for Compensation on Behalf of the Victims and Their Relatives. You can actually find this out there by David Gamadza to read and download. It's a massive 67-page pleading that attempts to completely rewrite the history of modern aviation's darkest mysteries. Let's dive in. Okay, let's look at how we're going to break this down. First, the legal pleading itself. 2. The alleged financial motive. 3. Flight MH17 and a supposed gold overload. 4. Flight MH370 and its sinking. 5. Flight MH290 acting as a decoy. And finally, number 6, the demands and compensation. Let's get right into Section 1, the legal pleading. So who is actually filing this? Well, it's authored by the claimant, David Gamadza, and he lists himself as the chief judge of the Court of Creation on Earth, as well as the president of an organization called Tomorrow's World Order. He states he's bringing this representative action before the International Court of Justice and an aviation claims tribunal. And he says he's doing this on behalf of the 537 victims of these tragic flight disasters and their families. To really grasp the sheer gravity of what's being filed here, you have to hear this exact quote from the document. The claimant charges the defendant, Malaysian Airline, with premeditated criminal negligence, international passenger endangerment, and coordinated murder. I mean, wow. The document doesn't just allege simple accidents or unfortunate mistakes. No, it strictly accuses the airline of intentionally orchestrating mass casualties across multiple flights as part of a highly coordinated plot. Moving on to Section 2, the alleged financial motive. $7 billion. That is the astronomical number sitting right at the core of this theory. Because you might be wondering, why on earth orchestrate such an elaborate plot? Well, the document alleges the airline was facing financial ruin. So instead of retiring aging planes, some of which were apparently 26 to 32 years old, they allegedly exploited a terrifying insurance loophole. The text claims Boeing actually incentivized this. The idea is, if a plane crashes but goes completely missing, Boeing avoids an $85 billion passenger liability payout while the airline still manages to get a brand new replacement plane plus a massive $7 billion hull insurance payout in just 3 years. The way the author builds this case is pretty fascinating. He explicitly formats his arguments by putting established aviation history, what he calls the official narrative, right up against his own factual challenge and proof. He takes these tragic, well-known events from the news and aggressively reframes them as intentional operational falsifications. And all of it, supposedly, was designed specifically to trigger those massive insurance payouts we just talked about. That brings us to Section 3, Flight MH17, Gold Overload. Now, what's really interesting here is the bizarre alternative cause the document presents for the MH17 crash. While it does acknowledge that a missile strike happened, officially downing the plane over Ukraine back in July 2014, the text claims the plane was actually doomed before that missile ever hit. Why? Because of a deliberate mechanical failure right after takeoff. And the alleged reason for that failure is where things get truly extraordinary. According to the document, the plane was illegally loaded with undeclared Russian gold. And we are not talking about a few loose bars here. The claimant values this gold at a staggering $6.6 trillion. To be exact, that's $6,666,777,888,999. The text claims this massive, gross weight overage completely blew past the plane's certified structural safety envelopes. So, mechanically speaking, how did this allegedly play out? The text asserts that all this incredibly heavy gold caused a catastrophic left side tire burst. But wait, the plot thickens. To mask the gold and still collect that insurance money, the document claims the airline orchestrated a literal mid-operation physical airplane swap. Yeah, the text asserts they swapped an aging 32-year-old decommission-ready plane designated M17 with the actual MH17 to pull the whole thing off. Okay, let's shift over to Section 4, Flight MH370, the sinking. Officially, as we all know, MH370 is considered an unresolvable disappearance. The plane just vanished. But this pleading presents a highly violent alternative. The document claims the airline actually tracked the plane via military radar the entire time, but intentionally withheld the coordinates. By making sure it was classified as missing, they allegedly guaranteed that $7 billion payout without ever having to compensate the passengers' families. And the document's explanation for what happened inside the cabin is, frankly, highly unorthodox. I'm just going to read this direct verbatim quote to you. The passengers, Americans, who called the FBI on the pilots who were shot at 24 times by the FBI being fatally shot 7 times. Right. So the text is literally claiming that U.S. federal agents were somehow inside the cockpit killing the pilots before the plane was deliberately taken down into the ocean. Let's move to Section 5, Flight MH290, the decoy. So the claimant brings a third aircraft into the mix, asserting that airframe MH290 was visually altered to act as a decoy. According to the text, engineering teams rapidly oversprayed the physical registration markers of MH290 with wet white paint to make it look totally identical to MH370. Not only that, but flotation mechanisms, which the author curiously refers to as trolls or stabilization drums, were deliberately ripped out of the cargo framework. The claim is that this was done to ensure immediate negative buoyancy, basically meaning they would sink unrecoverably when the two planes were ditched side by side into the sea. And the document boldly provides these exact coordinates where it claims both of these sealed planes currently rest. It says they are, quote, located directly at 08 degrees, 67 minutes, 89 seconds, expanding within the maritime vectors directly southeast and northwest of Beijing. Now, if you know anything about geography, you know for sure the coordinates stop at 60 minutes and 60 seconds. But despite these mathematically impossible figures, the claimant insists this is the verifiable maritime location of the wrecks, where he says the passengers remain trapped inside. Finally, we reach Section 6, Demands and Compensation. $85 billion. That is the sheer scale of the direct passenger compensation demand being made by the claimant against Malaysian Airlines. Moving from these abstract, frankly impossible theories to very real-world legal demands, he is asserting that this staggering sum must be held in trust for the families of the victims across all these flights. Plus, he's demanding compound interest accruing all the way back to 2014. But here is the ultimate twist. The claimant, David Gamadza, and his organization, Tomorrow's World Order, are also seeking a massive payday for themselves. The document formally submits a claim for an 8% contingency fee of the total compensation awarded. So, if that $85 billion were somehow granted, this would result in a staggering $6.8 billion payout going directly to them for their representational services and legal drafting. To wrap up its case, the document lays out formal recommendations to major international authorities, which really highlights just how systematic this whole pleading is trying to be. It demands the International Criminal Court indict the airline's board for crimes against humanity. It tells the UN Aviation Agency, ICAO, to completely revoke the airline's operating license, and it demands that Boeing publicly disclose all of its insurance payments related to these airframes. So what do these sweeping legal claims and incredibly specific alternative theories reveal about the enduring legacy of these tragic aviation mysteries? This document claims to offer the truth, but whether you view it as a completely fringe theory, a blatant financial grift, or just an aggressive legal challenge, it absolutely proves that the void left by MH17 and MH370 is still being filled by some staggering narratives, even over a decade later. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. What do you take away from the sheer audacity of this document?